Welcome back to Plot 27 Recaps. The movie opens on a remote island in Scotland's Outer Hebrides, where a man named Mason lives completely alone in an abandoned lighthouse. His only companion is his loyal dog. Every week, a young girl named Jessie delivers supplies to the island. During one delivery, Mason unexpectedly tells her not to come back anymore. Jessie is offended. After all, she and her uncle have been bringing him supplies for years, yet he has never once come down to greet them. Before she can argue any further, her uncle sounds the boat's horn, signaling that it's time to leave. Jessie reluctantly drops off a gift box at Mason's door and heads back. Earlier that day, her uncle had received warnings about dangerous weather conditions along the coast. Unfortunately, the forecast turns out to be right. Out of nowhere, a violent storm begins moving toward the island. Within minutes, massive waves are battering both Jessie's boat and her uncle's vessel. Realizing they're in serious trouble, Mason rushes into action. He launches his own boat and dives into the raging sea. He manages to rescue Jessie, but her uncle isn't as fortunate. His boat is swallowed by the storm, dragging him to the bottom of the ocean. When Jessie wakes up, she's devastated to learn that her uncle is gone. The following morning, Jessie questions why Mason hasn't contacted the authorities, but he ignores the topic and tells her to focus on recovering. Curious about the mysterious man who saved her life, she asks why he lives alone in a lighthouse that no longer works and why he never leaves the island. She then begs him to take her home, insisting that her family must be worried sick. That's when Mason drops a shocking truth. According to him, Jessie doesn't have any family left. Her mother died years ago, and she never knew her father. Since then, her uncle had been raising her because there was no one else. Jessie is stunned. Even more disturbing is the fact that Mason somehow knows all of this. Later, while Mason is away, Jessie discovers a hidden dagger inside a drawer and secretly hides it beneath her pillow. That night, she wakes from a terrifying nightmare and finds Mason standing nearby. Panicking, she pulls the dagger on him. Mason calmly takes the weapon away and explains that it was only a bad dream. Instead of scolding her, he teaches her how to properly hold the knife and warns her never to use a weapon simply because she's afraid. As the days pass, Mason continues taking care of Jessie. She eventually learns that he once served in the Royal Marines alongside her uncle. Since Mason refuses to tell her his real name, she decides to name his dog Jack. While checking her injured leg, Mason discovers that the wound has become infected. Unfortunately, getting to a hospital isn't possible. While Mason travels to town for medicine, Jessie explores the lighthouse and finds several drawings he made of herself and Jack. She also realizes that he opened the gift she left for him, which secretly makes her happy. Meanwhile, far away in London, a major political scandal is unfolding. Stephen Manafort, the head of MI6, is being questioned during a public inquiry involving Thea, an advanced surveillance system known as Total Human Engagement Analytics. The program is under investigation for illegally monitoring British citizens. During the hearing, Chairman Hanneron announces that both Manafort and Prime Minister Fordham are under investigation, and Thea is officially shut down. Later, Manafort dismisses the inquiry as a political stunt designed to gain attention before an election. Fordham temporarily places Deputy Director Roberta Frost in charge of MI6, allowing Manafort to conduct a covert operation outside normal channels. At the same time, surveillance cameras capture Mason while he's buying clothes for Jessie. When the footage is analyzed, Thea identifies him as Timur Chermoev, a notorious terrorist wanted for bombing the British embassy in Algeria. Believing they've found a dangerous fugitive, Frost immediately orders an assault team to be deployed. Back on the island, Mason senses something is wrong during dinner. Without hesitation, he tells Jessie to hide in the bathroom and lock the door. Moments later, armed operatives arrive. Using a series of carefully prepared traps, Mason systematically eliminates every member of the assault team. After the attack, Mason discovers something heartbreaking. Jack has been killed. As MI6 reviews the operation, Thea's operations chief, Aziz, realizes they targeted the wrong man. The person they encountered clearly isn't Chermoev. Frost immediately orders a full investigation into the identities of both Mason and Jessie. She also sends in their deadliest contract operative, James Workman. Meanwhile, senior analyst Madison uncovers evidence that Chermoev's profile was altered to conceal someone else's identity. The truth finally comes out. Michael Mason is a former Royal Marine Commando, an SBS operator, and a highly trained MI6 agent. Even more surprising, official records show that he died 10 years ago. Frost can't understand why someone would frame one of their own operatives as a wanted terrorist. Soon afterward, she receives reports from a farm in Scotland that match Mason and Jessie's description and decides to investigate personally. When Manafort sees surveillance photos of Mason and Jessie, he's visibly shaken. He immediately contacts Workman and orders him to kill them both. Before long, police arrive at the farm after the farmer's son reports suspicious activity. Realizing danger is closing in, the farmer helps Mason and Jessie escape through a side entrance. But before they can get away, Workman shoots the farmer dead. After fighting their way through several officers, Mason and Jessie flee the area. Frost attempts to contact Workman, only to discover that he's gone completely off-grid. Once again, Mason and Jessie narrowly escape. Meanwhile, Workman murders a police officer and steals a civilian vehicle to continue the hunt. Trying to understand what's happening, Frost confronts Manafort and asks whether he knows Mason. Manafort finally reveals the truth. Years earlier, they ran an unofficial Black Ops program called Black Kites. The operatives answered to no one and operated completely outside MI6 oversight. Among them, Mason was the best assassin they ever had. However, during one mission, he was ordered to eliminate a foreign intelligence official. Instead, Mason spared the target, falsified his report, and disappeared without a trace. Because of Mason's skills, Manafort warns Frost that stopping him won't be easy. Meanwhile, Madison discovers hidden Black Kites files on a backup server. The documents reveal that Mason once helped an Iranian scientist defect after the scientist provided critical information about Iran's nuclear program. Instead of protecting him, MI6 ordered Mason to kill the scientist to preserve plausible deniability, but Mason refused. Frost praises Madison for uncovering the truth. Unfortunately, Manafort overhears everything. Although he successfully tracks Mason's location, he secretly blocks Thea from accessing the information and sends it directly to Workman. Mason eventually takes Jessie to meet Arthur Booth, a former MI6 systems architect and the creator of Thea. Mason explains that all he wants is to keep Jessie safe. She's just an innocent child who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Booth is shocked that Mason was found at all. Years earlier, when Mason disappeared, Booth created a completely new identity for him as an oil worker in Aberdeen. The identity belonged to no real person. Somehow, someone later replaced it with the profile of Timur Chermoev, turning Mason into one of the world's most wanted men. After hearing this, Mason becomes convinced that Manafort is behind everything. He asks Booth to take care of Jessie if anything happens to him. Unfortunately, Jessie secretly overhears the conversation. Booth then reveals another heartbreaking truth. He's dying from cancer and doesn't have much time left. Earlier, Jessie had already found his medication in the kitchen and suspected something was wrong. Knowing time is running out, Mason asks Booth to arrange a meeting with Kamal, a human trafficker who also works as an MI6 informant. But before Mason can leave, Workman suddenly appears and attacks. Once again, Mason and Jessie survive. Together with Booth, they travel to meet Kamal. After losing contact with Workman, Manafort orders Ross and his team to continue the pursuit. Following an emotional goodbye with Booth, Jessie admits that she doesn't want to be left alone. But Mason refuses. As much as he cares about her, staying together would only put her in greater danger. The pair eventually arrive in London and head straight for Kamal's nightclub. At the same time, Madison detects an unauthorized login inside Thea. Frost orders her to trace it immediately. Manafort continues trying to hide Mason's location, but suddenly his access is locked. Madison has set a trap. Within moments, both she and Frost discover that Manafort is the one manipulating the system. Meanwhile, Aziz pulls up every camera feed inside Kamal's club. Mason asks Kamal to create a new identity for Jessie and help her leave the country that very night. Kamal refuses. In response, Mason threatens to expose his criminal dealings with Manafort. If that happens, every MI6 agent in Britain will come after him. Faced with no other choice, Kamal agrees, but only if Mason kills Manafort. Kamal arranges for Jessie to be transported to a safe house in Spain. A boat is scheduled to leave from the Isle of Dogs in just 30 minutes. As events unfold, Frost sees Ross and his team arriving at the club while MI6 tactical unit remains en route. Mason contacts Booth after Manafort's bodyguards kidnap Jessie. Using CCTV cameras, Booth tracks their movements and tells Mason where they've taken her. After defeating both the MI6 team and Manafort's guards, Mason successfully rescues Jessie. The two immediately race toward the departing boat. When they finally reach the Isle of Dogs, Jessie begs Mason to come with her. Mason explains that letting her go is the only way he can truly keep her safe. But before they can say goodbye, Workman arrives. With no time left, Mason throws Jessie onto the departing boat. After making sure she's safe, he stays behind to face Workman alone. Following a brutal fight, Mason finally defeats Workman. With his last obstacle gone, he heads straight for Manafort's private residence. Manafort angrily reminds him that he violated the Black Kite's code years ago. Mason doesn't care. Without hesitation, he executes him. 3 months later, in Spain, Jessie is sitting in a cafe while Frost quietly monitors her through CCTV cameras. When someone remotely moves one of the cameras, Frost becomes convinced that the person is Mason. A waiter approaches Jessie and hands her a package. Inside, she finds one of Mason's chess pieces. Realizing that Mason is still alive, Jessie finally smiles, and that's how the movie ends. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this recap, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next movie recap.